Hey guys, this is Lisa with Hope for the Beautiful Mind. So, as promised, I want to start posting more videos to just create more meaningful, more personable ways to engage with you guys and just help you understand what Hope for the Beautiful Minds is really about and just get to know a little bit more about what it is that I'm passionate about. And also, I feel like it's a good way to just help put a face to the name, a face to the brand, a face to the movement, and just it's a little more, and I'm hoping that it's more impactful anyway, than just writing and reposting positive quotes. I mean, all that stuff is great, but it's just sometimes it's just better to talk about things, and just create that open, healthy dialogue. So today I want to talk about hope warriors. So a hope warrior is a brave soul, this individual who is willing to openly talk about their struggles in for the sole purpose of just encouraging someone else, just allowing someone else to see this vulnerable side of them, to let them know that they're not alone, to just share your story and just give somebody that like glimpse of like, the light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. I think in a world full of filters and highlight reels where everybody's life always seems so much more perfect, the grass always looks greener on the other side, I think that transparency can be appreciated. So I'm hoping to bring that. So obviously I'm the first hope warrior for Hope for the Beautiful Mind. So when you get chosen as a hope warrior, there's this interview slash questionnaire. So I'm literally gonna go through these questions, this whole questionnaire slash interview thing, in a questions slash answers style. And so let's get started. All right. The first question: what is your diagnosis? All right. So I was diagnosed with PTSD, MDD, BPD, insomnia, anxiety, OCD, and conversion disorder. Were you diagnosed by a professional medical provider? If so, when? Yes. Uh, I was diagnosed back in 2014 when I was locked up in a psychiatric ward. At the time, I was actually still active duty military. I was in the Army, for those of you that don't know. What was your initial reaction? Did you agree with your diagnosis? All right. At first, no, absolutely not. I was angry with the doctors and I was in denial. I mean, I knew I had like some issues, obviously, but like a full blown diagnosis, it just seemed like extreme, like how I rationalized it. I'm like, all right, like, what Latina slash Caribbean woman doesn't have like, a little spice to them kind of thing. But no, like, when I sat down with that printout that the doctors gave me at the time, like, I really gave myself permission to let my guard down and be honest with myself, and take the emotion out of it. So just start looking at this thing objectively and just really ask myself, like, okay, out of this list, like, how much do I recognize this within myself? How much of this resonates with me? It was different than trying like to talk in front of this whole group of people, or you feel like you're defending yourself or your sanity, like in front of a staff of like medical providers. You kind of feel attacked. Well, I felt initially. So when I gave myself that permission to just kind of like, okay, let's be honest and like, what's up? The more it really sank in, and I was like, wow, like this literally describes me to the T. So I went from feeling angry to feeling hopeful. My condition was so common that there's textbooks, there's licensed professionals, there's people who dedicate their lives to helping people navigate through these things, So it took away that feeling that, I was the only one that felt like this, nobody understands, and that feeling of isolation, like nobody can relate to your pain, makes that emotional pain that much more unbearable. Um, so, next question. If you did not agree with your diagnosis, why? So, no, like I said before, I was angry at the doctors. I was in denial at first. I didn't agree because, when I thought of the term like mentally ill, like that actual term, I automatically thought of somebody suffering with something like Down syndrome. I was so ignorant to the fact that mental health, behavioral health encompasses so much. I didn't realize that there were so many facets and aspects to this thing. It really is just a part, like, how you have your physical health, like emotional health is real. um and honestly, the second part to it was, I didn't really want to admit that there was anything wrong. It was easier to believe that this was just like, oh, it's just a rough patch. I'm just feeling a little down sometimes, or like a dry season in my life kind of thing that, will soon come to an end. But I realized that it was easier to try to shift blame and make excuses than to just come face to face with the reality that this was one of those things that I was going to have to learn how to fight, like this lifelong battle kind of thing. Okay, next question. What symptoms of your illness do you find that you struggle with the most? For example, if you suffer from depression, you may struggle with drug abuse, self-harm, uncontrollable weeping, etc. I would have to say that it is the black and white thinking that is associated with BPD. So for those of you that don't know, BPD, or borderline personality disorder, is not the same thing as bipolar disorder. Many people mix the two up, but they're not the same. Black and white thinking, it entails of seeing an individual as like all good, or like, all bad kind of thing. But I'm slowly just becoming more aware, and just like on a deeper level, receiving that understanding that all people, myself included, we are all just different shades of gray. So as an individual, it is our job to find which shades of gray we're willing to tolerate and set those healthy emotional boundaries for ourselves. You got to set them accordingly, and just remember that we are all part of that same kind of gray mix. So acknowledge that within yourself, your own, not just toxic traits, but just like, okay, like, I know that I can be this way, but do it from a place of just self-awareness, not self-condemnation or judgment. You know what I mean? So if someone has, on your scale, through your filter, because perception is reality. So how you perceive a situation or someone, their shade of gray is a little too dark for you. It's just like, oh, I'm not really feeling this person because of X, Y, and Z. That doesn't necessarily make the person good or bad. It's just like, okay, this is where I draw the line, and that person is kind of outside that boundary, but you can do so without judgment, and you can still respect yourself, set those boundaries, and not think that that person is just like evil or something like that. And it's the same thing with yourself. One of the things about mental health is like recognizing these traits within you and just putting in the work. So if you're always in denial, like, oh no, though this is just the way I am, or you're not going to use this as a scapegoat, like, oh well, I have such and such labels, so this is the way I am. No, you recognize within yourself those traits, those symptoms, and you work on them. Next question. Do you have a good support system? Sort of. So I may not have everything slash everyone that I want, but I do have everything I need. So my spirituality plays a huge, huge part of my life. So with that being said, I believe without a shadow of a doubt that God places the right people at the right time in our lives, and everyone who crosses our path is for a reason. So some people are seasonal or temporary people, and some people, there's like these special ones that are permanent people, like my soul sister slash BFF. Um, and then there's times where, even with permanent people and those loved ones, like, there are times where there's like a season where God will, I believe, will have people exit your life or purposely be unavailable so that you can draw and rely on Him alone for strength and guidance. So there might be like loved ones who want to be there for you, or you feel like no one's there for you at a crucial time kind of thing. And it's not that they don't love you. People have their own things going on. It's not that you're not important to them. But then it's like, if you notice, like, wow, it's like everybody, even those that you love, you know, like that you know for sure are in your corner. You're just like, wow, what's really going on? Like, I just feel so alone. I mean, I'm speaking from, you know, just my perspective and my experiences. I really feel that that's a time where God is just trying to pull you closer to him, you know. I think about like Jesus in the wilderness kind of thing, you know. He needed that alone time away from the disciples, away from everybody else. And, you know, how does your family slash loved ones feel about your condition? For example, some families are very supportive, while other people prefer to keep their condition a secret from their families. All right, if I'm honest, it's a little awkward. But when I was hospitalized in the psych ward, all three of my sisters and my mother, like, they flew up without hesitation, no questions asked. So my family, they knew like something was off about me, you know, as a child, like, but they kind of just chopped it up to like, hey, she's just an emotional person, you know, she's just like is an angry person, you know, it's just like it was like chopped up to my personality type kind of thing. So, you know, that was that. But in that time, we had some heart to heart talks, and I feel like we made a lot of progress. So, you know, and that was a very like low time in my life. So when it mattered, they were there. Um, but as far as like regular conversation about mental health stuff, no, not really. All right, next question. What made you start speaking slash want to speak about your condition? All right, so I discovered that I had a hidden talent while I was hospitalized. So that was writing. So as a part of my treatment, one of the writing instructors, she convinced me to read one of my pieces in front of an audience at this poetry club. It was called Busboys and Poets, and it was in Washington, D.C. at the time. So the poem was dealing with, you know, sexual abuse as a child and some other things that I had endured. So long story short, at the end of this experience, I had both women and men coming up to me, thanking me for sharing. And I remember some of them, they had tears in their eyes, you know, and expressed that they too had gone through, you know, some sort of sexual abuse or like something similar to my situation. So I haven't stopped talking since then. You know, one of the biggest things was when I was going through a lot of the things that I was going through, I felt like I didn't have my voice, you know, like I lost my voice. So I remember, like, for the longest time, I was angry with myself, you know. I was like, you should have been stronger. You should have spoken up sooner. You know, should have, could have, would have, but I didn't, you know. So when I exercise my voice now, it's not even like, oh, you know, trying to get attention, trying to do the most. Really, it's like empowerment for myself. You know, it's healing for myself, like me talking about the things, my reality that I've been through, you know, instead of acting like I just have it all together, like, you know, this pretty package, like, oh, you know, like, no, this is what's real, and this is my truth, you know. And part of finding my voice was getting over trying to people please. So one of the things that makes people the most miserable is not being true to themselves. So imagine this impossible task that you set for yourself, this like, you know, standard, like I'm just going to try to keep everybody in my circle, everybody around me happy. You know, there's always going to be somebody that's not happy with you, or they're happy today, but you do something else and they don't agree with it. They feel like you should do it another way kind of thing. It's really crappy when you change who you are, or you're watering yourself down, or you filter yourself, or you silence yourself. You know what I mean? In order to make someone else comfortable. So now you failed at this impossible goal of keeping everybody happy, right? But then you're even more miserable because you're not even being your true self. So the least you can do is just be your highest authentic self, because regardless of who's not happy with you, you'll have that inner peace. All right. Next question. What is your personal view on mental illness and medications? Are you for or against meds? Why or why not? Okay, so I am not against the use of medications, but I do believe that the end term should be to be able to hopefully live without them. So I think of medication as sort of a crutch, and I don't say that in a, in a negative way. I literally mean like an actual crutch. So when someone, breaks their leg, and the crutches becomes this essential necessary part of the healing process, but the long-term goal is to get the strength in that leg, back, so fully, or as much as it's reasonably possible. So it's the same concept with mental health. So of course there are always going to be exceptions, and every individual is different, so, and that's okay. Do what's best for you and your unique circumstance, but just keep it real with yourself, keep yourself accountable. So being an individual who has struggled with addiction, so I know that there's certain medications, like with pain medication or anxiety medications, like, it's like, like the really good stuff. But, even though I have physical ailments and different things like outside of my mental health stuff that I've endured, I try to ask myself questions and, to keep me in check. Like, am I really in pain, or am I trying to use this as an emotional band-aid? Like, yes, I'm in pain, but, do I really need this? Those kind of questions. So just be honest with yourself, keep yourself accountable. Next question. When did you decide to get help? Did you hit rock bottom? Yeah, so I think, no, I know I've hit rock bottom more than once in my life. Um, the very first significant time, I was 16 years old. I attempted to take my own life by taking an entire bottle of pills. And that, although that was not the first time that I attempted suicide, the first time I was 8 years old, it was the closest time to being successful. You know what I mean? So I probably told someone about, me being sexually abused by a family member. And the situation overall initially was not handled or received well, like at all. So I reverted, to being quiet in that aspect, and I just left that like little piece like alone. I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna push this down deep down in there and just try not to bring it up ever again. Just like, let's glaze over that. Um, the next significant time, besides me receiving Christ and getting saved, it was while I was in the military. So I started having issues, neurological issues, which affected my ability to walk. I started having seizures, mini strokes, and I was forced to give up my oldest son at the time to a family member until my physical health improved. So I felt so low that I came up with a plan on how I was going to take my life, and I even made arrangements for my son. So luckily, one of my supervisors came to my house to do like a wellness check. I ended up breaking down. I told him everything. I even showed him like the whole 14-page suicide note. And instead of judging me or condemning me, he got me the help I needed. How do you think your condition will or has affected parenthood and your children/future children? I always thought that because I had issues that I was gonna, somehow scar my children because I wasn't normal, whatever that means. But I've learned so far in my journey that because I have all these issues, I try to take their feelings much more into consideration. I have 3 boys, 2, 4, and 7. And I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? It's not a walk in the park. I'm not over here like, Santa Maria or Mother Teresa, just like, oh my God. Like, no, I have my good days and bad days just like everybody else, The important thing that I learned is to be honest and own up your mistakes. So let's say if I'm having one of those bad days where I'm struggling to, get out of bed, another wave of depression hit me, or, whatever have you, or, I'm overreacting over, little things like that, or I make a mistake, whatever. I sit down with my kids and I tell them, you know what, mommy made a mistake or mommy overreacted. I'm so sorry. And I genuinely apologize. And then, I'm going to try to work on that. And I will, you know what I mean? And I do. So it's not just like I'm making excuses for my toxic behavior or my mistakes, even though they're little people, like, they're still people. So what I'm hoping to show them is that even grown-ups don't have it all together. Grown-ups make mistakes, but what's important is acknowledging those mistakes, owning and just trying to fix them and apologizing for those mistakes. So I know that there's mixed views here, with like parenting, and that's totally fine. I know some people prefer to just always show strength, like, hey, you're the adult, they're relying on you for strength, kids shouldn't see you any kind of way. But to that I say, like, I am still being strong for my children, but I'm showing them that it's not always about a perfect performance. It's just about trying your best. When you make a mistake, pick yourself back up and just, tomorrow's a new day. You get to start over again. Try to do better the next time. Through all this, I've really learned that God's grace really is truly sufficient, so all you can do is try to do your best and just literally take it one step at a time, one day at a time. For those really, really bad days where, it's easy to say, oh yeah, take it a day at a time. Yo, like, really, when it gets serious, sometimes you have to take it a moment at a time, a tantrum at a time, an hour at a time, a minute at a time, where an hour can feel like an eternity when you're not okay up here at the time, So just do the best that you can do and give yourself that wiggle room and that grace and that gentleness to just be like, hey, I'm not okay today, but that's okay. I'm not going to judge myself and put myself down and make myself feel even worse. I'll try again tomorrow, kind of thing. All right, next question. What are some coping skills you use to get through hard times? Grounding techniques, prayer, meditation, aromatherapy, etc. All right, so it really depends on the situation, but the very first thing I've learned to do is to pray. So it sounds corny, sounds cliche, but it literally forces me to stop and just be still mentally and just get it together, even if it's just for like a quick second. I experience a lot of social anxiety as well, so grounding techniques have become a fundamental thing for me as well. To help with insomnia, I've established a pretty strong sleep hygiene routine that includes like a diffuser, like with my favorite essential oil. It's usually lavender. Like, I'm a junkie for like some lavender. And ocean/relaxing sounds. I have an app on my phone. I also have the Pandora station, and I just play that throughout the night. It helps with nightmares. If I don't play it, I notice that I don't sleep because then it's too quiet and then I get paranoid. What else? So certain lights, like really dim lights, obviously warm showers, chamomile tea, because my anxiety really gives me really bad like GI symptoms, so that tea like kind of helps like dissolve that knot in my stomach, I feel sometimes. And then if I'm really, really stressed out, I'll throw some melatonin in the mix. But I try to be sporadic with that because sometimes that gives me like trippy dreams, So, and music is everything. So music, it can help you change your mood. Especially mine, like when I feel like I'm stuck in like that negative feeling kind of thing. I literally have like a feel good playlist with all my favorite happy songs, So a lot of times what we tend to do is we're feeling down, right? We're feeling sad. And then we go ahead and feed that sadness. We're listening to, oh, this was my ex's like songs. This is, and like doing the most. Like, come on now. Try forcing yourself to listen to something happy. Like you might be really, really angry, or really, really down kind of thing. And you're listening to this like upbeat, happy song, and next thing you know, like you might feel like, or something. So the key to this is it's work. You know, it's not just like boop, like this little easy button that you can just press and like, oh, I'm happy. You know, it's work. But it's either you put in the work or you sit there and feel sorry for yourself. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, you have to take control because you are responsible for your own happiness, you know? All right, how did you hear about Hope for the Beautiful Minds? I started it. The name came from a poem that I wrote. It's called It's in My Eyes. And it's from my first poetry book, Pieces of Me. In that poem, I reference people who struggle with like mental health issues as having beautiful minds, ones that are wonderfully complex and just simply misunderstood. So, and of course, the word hope is an acronym for Hold On, Pain Ends. So the whole thing reads, Hold on, pain ends for the beautiful minds. I wanted people to know that not only is there hope, but there's beauty in our struggle. So a lot of people who have mental health issues just see it as like, my mind is broken, like, you know, it's a lot of self-hate and just like judgment. But a lot of people who suffer from mental health stuff like end up, you know, being the most talented artists, like dopest vibes, like, you know, write the, you know, most emotional like songs kind of thing. There's beauty in that. So a lot of times these abnormal symptoms, it's actually normal reactions to abnormal situations that we've encountered. You know, it's not that you're crazy, it's not that you're less than, that you're damaged goods, it's none of that, you know. So instead of seeing it as something like condemning, acknowledge the beauty in that uniqueness. You know, there's beauty in that brokenness. Something beautiful can come out of that. So that's the whole concept behind that. All right, so last question. We are always looking for ways to improve. Do you have any suggestions on what we can offer other people suffering from the same illness? So I personally would love for Hope for the Beautiful Minds to eventually be a full-blown 501c3, you know, registered nonprofit, like with all the works. So that way we can give back to the community in more tangible ways and just, you know, simply spreading God's message of hope. So me being, you know, Army veteran, when I was still in, like, I was, you know, hopping around a lot and stuff like that. So, but everywhere I went, I still organized, like, different retreats or, well, different outreaches. So, you know, whether it was working with a food pantry or so to feed homeless people, like, on Thanksgiving so they can have that nice, warm, sit-down dinner, or, you know, clothing drive for women and children in, like, battered shelters kind of thing. Um, that's what I want to do. Give back to the community in tangible ways, you know. One of the things I hate is just like you hear a need, you know, somebody's like crying out to you, they're in pain, you know, it's just, you know, you hit them with the, oh, Dito, you know, I'll pray for you. Pray for me, but I'm hungry now. Pray for me, but I'm hurting now. Like, yeah, that's nice, but like, you know, what I want to be able to do is just like put something back in people's hands, you know. So another thing that I actually do this with my kids. It's called blessing bags, you know. So we literally pick out toiletries and, you know, different things like that, and we take these bags and we decorate them really beautifully and add like a handwritten note or handwritten poem, put them in the bags kind of thing, and we give them to homeless people when we, you know, so let's say it could be at a red light, you know, if I feel moved to, because there are those panhandler schemes, so that's why I said like free of judgment, but if you feel moved to, because you know when somebody's trying to BS you, just give them the bag, you know. So a lot of times it's unfortunate, but a lot of homeless people do struggle with drug addiction. So sometimes it's like, just like with anything else, addiction is an illness, you know. So when they give, like, get cash in their hands, sometimes, you know, them symptoms or those cravings kind of overtake that, and even though they are hungry, they end up spending it on a fix, you know what I mean? So in those blessing bags we also put in gift cards to different places, you know, to eat. It could be McDonald's, it could be like a Walmart gift card, it could just be little things like that, you know. So it's not always just like, you know, giving out like, you know, straight cash like that, but there's different more meaningful ways to just give back to people, you know. So this concludes the the video. I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. If you feel moved to, please feel free to share or tag someone who you would feel would benefit from just hearing about this. So I'm going to try my best to post at least once a week and just touch base. And if you guys are interested in becoming a Hope Warrior, check us out at www.hopeforthebeautifulminds.com or on Instagram at Hope for the Beautiful Mind. Send us a DM. You know, we'd love to hear your story. You know, I welcome you with arms wide open. This virtual platform, you know, that's the beauty of it. You know, you can just like spread your message to more people than, you know, just like your neighbor. You know, your neighbor might not be passionate about this, but somebody in a whole nother state who gets in touch with us, you know, just, you know, can build like that community. And don't be discouraged. Like, let's say, oh, well, you know, there's already a Hope Warrior who, you know, talked about depression. So, you know, why does no, your voice matters. Your story matters. You know, two people could have the same ailments or labels or, you know, diagnosis and just like have completely different paths, you know. So still, you know, don't let that hold you back. I'd love to hear from you guys. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you so much again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.